Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer once again, but you can call me Matt, and we're here on episode 66 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. Alongside me are my trusty co-hosts, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, and Eric, Tortuga Power. How are you guys doing today?
Wonderful. Thanks for asking, Matt.
Howdy ho.
Well, today we are returning to our kind of regularly scheduled programming. The last couple of episodes we've been talking about games that we really enjoyed in 2020 and games that we're really looking forward to in this year, 2021. But today we're going to be returning to talking about a specific game that some really exciting gameplay sort of previews were provided by Slytherin a couple of weeks back now. But before we get into that, I guess, as always, what are you guys playing lately? Jean, what have you been playing?
Ooh, I've been playing a mix of... I wasn't expecting that. I wrote down everything else but what I've been playing. You figure after 65 episodes. So I've been playing a whole smorgasbord of games. So I finally got around and I've tried out Order of Battle. It's only been 5-6 years since it's been around, and I want to kick myself in the ass because I've been missing quite a bit. They just came out with the Allies Defiant DLC, and I gotta admit, I was comparing this game a lot to Panzer Corps 2. And there's a lot in this game that I really, really enjoy. Like, there's a lot of good shit in this game. So I've been playing that quite a bit and really loving how intuitive, how quick learning curve is. I think one thing that really kind of, I guess, sticks out for me that just keeps it coming to the forefront of my mind is the fact that when you're doing like naval combat, right? Like, your ships don't have to be next to each other. You know how in like Strategic Command, I know that's a strategic level game, but your units have to be touching each other. Well, in Order of Battle, they can be on like different parts of the map and still being able to barrage each other. And I really enjoy that because I feel like in Panzer Corps 2 and Strategic Command, like units have to be right next to each other to engage each other. And I always feel like, they shouldn't have to be that close. What do you guys think about that? Is that something? Do you see that a lot in a lot of games?
I have a question actually. What's the turn timer for Order of Battle? Is it like an hour or a day or?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think it's abstracted. It might be a day, but I feel like it's abstracted.
Yeah,
I don't know that there is one.
Oh, okay. Well, then, for anything more than like an hour, I probably would be. That does sound okay. That sounds like an improvement. Yeah, because you want range built into naval combat. It makes sense. But we've talked about this a few times. I know Matt and I have pretty strong opinions about it. I don't think any turn-based naval combat that isn't WeGo can really correctly abstract naval combat.
Yeah, so what I would say is, of the games that do this, and I haven't played Order of Battle in a while, but I did play it quite a bit when it first came out. And when it first came out, and it's been out for several years, I remember thinking like, oh, it's better than Panzer Corps. Like, it's a better Panzer Corps game because it had sort of a frontline system. It had a logistics system that really felt like it handled supply a lot better than Panzer Corps 1 did. And then it also had this element of aircraft takeoff and land. They only have so much fuel, and then they have to return to base and land. Whereas, like in Panzer Corps, it was kind of like, yeah, you'd run out of fuel, but like you'd kind of, you just have to go to any other airfield, right? Whereas, like in this game, there's actually the act of landing, sort of rearming for a turn on the carrier before you can take back off. So there were a lot of things that I think they did really well in Order of Battle for this type of game. I'm still not sold on the naval combat being terribly interesting. You still have sort of the same weird attrition timescale method of, it feels like a destroyer or cruisers treated more like a division sort of wearing away the enemy over time rather than like quick punching naval combat. But that being said, for this type of game, I think it does about as good of a job as it can in a lot of different respects. I never really noticed the range element, John, being something that drew me to it, but I will say that the supply and frontline system was definitely something that drew me to it, and the way they handled aircraft with regards to carriers, I think was a marked improvement over other similar types of games like this. And I think you see some, I don't know that the developers of the Strategic Mind games, took this from Order of Battle, but you definitely see these elements of needing to actually land, needing to actually refuel at the base, being vulnerable when you're on the field. Like, those elements are included in Panzer Corps 2, so clearly, like, the Slytherin folks talked and sort of incorporated that into their design. And you see elements of that in other similar type of games like the Strategic Mind games.
Yeah, I've noticed that with especially with Panzer Corps. I noticed Panzer Corps 2, which is a more recent title, picked up some of the stuff from Order of Battle, like the purchase screen, the deployment screen, things like that. I did notice that they kind of got influenced by that. But other games besides Order of Battle, Black Sea came out, Combat Mission Black Sea. Slytherin published stats on Steam. So I've been wearing away many hours doing that. Big props to Slytherin again, because I really love having all my combat missions in one game's library. So I don't have to go looking for my login code for Battlefront, which is somewhere in the basement in Brooklyn. I have yet to find after so many years. But yeah, so I've been wearing around Combat Mission quite a bit. And two other games that have been new additions to my library, which I've really been enjoying. Mars Horizons, I know me and Eric talked about that quite a bit. And Door Kickers 2. And I actually were publishing an interview with the head honcho over at Door Kickers 2 either this week or next week. And that was an incredible episode. Me and Eric found out that he actually was the game designer behind numerous Silent Hunter titles. So that was a very surprising thing. And Door Kickers 2 is going to have a wealth of incredible features coming to it. So be sure to check out that interview when we post it on Developer Dialogue.
Did you guys ask him when the next Silent Hunter game is that he's going to make?
We didn't touch on that.
I think Wolfpack 345 would definitely be down for that.
Eric did actually ask about what happened. So I wasn't aware that Silent Hunter 5 had bad reviews, but Eric kind of brought that up. And it was an interesting response.
All right. Well, I was not able to make that episode, but I will definitely tune in. Eric, what have you been playing?
Oh, okay. Well, I was playing Mars Horizon, and that led me to play Kerbal Space Program. So those are two of the games I've been playing lately, but I've also been going through this real slew of Slytherin titles. So I just started playing. We'll probably want to talk about this a little bit with you, Matt, but let me just put it on the shelf for a second. Field of Glory 2 Medieval. Also, I got Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2, and that is a fun game. I've never really gotten that deep into the Warhammer 40k lore. I've always kind of like, if somebody had a movie I could watch, I would watch it, but just I'm not usually a person who reads I'm not sure if I would pick up a 40k novel or something like that. But it's like, first of all, the price of admission in this game, you're paying for practically like a feature-length cinematic movie. It's got so many good cinematics. It's gorgeous.
Which game was this again?
Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. Okay.
Is that the game of theirs that uses like the same engine as the Battlestar Galactica series, or was that? Or I think that was Starhammer. This
one uses the Unreal Engine, so
okay.
I know it uses the Unreal Engine. I don't think that's the engine that they used for the Battlestar Galactica Deadlock.
It looks. I'm looking at
gorgeous.
Screenshots. They look.
Jeez.
I mean, I see similarities, although you're probably right.
Well, the thing is, there's a difference. Battlestar Galactica Deadlock actually uses the Z-axis, so it's a three-dimensional game.
Okay.
And this is flat plane 2D.
Is that a monster attacking a ship?
Yeah, there's I mean, 40K lore, I don't think any of us are experts. I mean, the fact that you asked that question, John, I would have labeled you or guessed that you would be the 40K expert. The fact that you aren't means that I don't think any of us know. But yeah, there's monsters, space monsters, and they're attacking ships, and yeah, I think it's chaos. I believe you're looking at chaos.
Well, maybe if you want more about Warhammer 40K now, you can go to wargamer.com.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's big news too.
We might have to talk about that on another episode, but for those of you not in the know, wargamer.com, sort of this long-standing, they've been around since 1995, wargaming website, just recently went through a substantial rebrand, and they're bringing over a lot of tabletop stuff, but not like wargame tabletop stuff, but like Warhammer 40K, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. Like, they're bringing a lot of that type of content into the Wargamer, which I kind of have mixed opinions of that. Like, I like the idea of broadening out into tabletop a little bit. I think there's a lot of overlap there, but I wonder what that says about the name of the website and what they're really going to be covering. But we can talk about that on another episode some other time.
Well, I think this is another one that you might have some comment on. Have you ever played Rogue State Revolution? Either of you?
I have not. I have played Rogue State, the first one, which I loved. I have Rogue State Revolution in my Steam catalog, and I will definitely be playing that. And that might actually be on my top 5 most anticipated list when I do that for my YouTube channel, which is crazy because it's February and I haven't done it yet. But I am excited about it. I just haven't played it yet. I've heard it's hard.
Well, yeah, I would say that's hard. Yeah, because I played the tutorial, and then that was when I first picked it up 2 weeks ago. Then I actually streamed it today, but unfortunately the tutorial had been broken in the last 2 weeks, just development improvements, accidentally breaking something. And then I was kind of, okay, so on the stream I was like, okay, I'll cancel the tutorial, and now I just have to play. I was like, there's nobody to hold my hand. I don't know what to do. So I really fumbled, and I was definitely on a downward spiral. I was going to lose for sure. The game's really interesting. The one thing I love the most about it, for sure, right now, I mean, it's got a good base underlying gameplay as well, but they have these really, like, very well polished and very, like, I don't know, they're so, wish I could think of a clever way of describing them, but they're like artsy almost. There's Command and Conquer style briefings where they actually record people. Oh, wow. It's like full motion.
They went the FMV way. Okay, I remember when it was on like the what do you call it, the Steam like sale, or not, like the demo thing where they were showing off different games that were in development like in October, and you could download demos for free, and they had Rogue State. And I remember I started it up and I didn't play it, but I watched like the first minute of like a briefing, and I was like, are they really, like, I wasn't sure if they were going the FMV route or if it was just like because the game was still early in development.
What's FMV?
Full motion video.
Oh yeah, it's full. It reminds me so much of Command and Conquer, and maybe that's the reason why I like it, because it really rubs that nostalgia part of my brain. I thought it was actually well done though. It fits because they kind of it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is contrary to how the feel of the game is for the first, like, you boot it up and they have this beautiful music. Now I can see it. It's probably a little tongue-in-cheek. I don't know. I think the whole thing works, but I could see it being hit or miss for people.
By the way, I think my favorite thing about the first game in that series, just Rogue State, was the national anthem.
That's it.
Basenji.
That's the one. It might be the same. Is it Basenji?
Yes.
Oh, that's really
like
good.
Bring us the king, bring us the, like, his head or something like that. You know,
it might be a different variant, but they know how to do national anthems.
It's so good. Like, it's better than the Russian national anthem for sure.
So, last thing, I just want to jump back to Field of Glory 2 Medieval, and this is probably will be our segue to what you're playing, because I know you've been playing in the tournament. I played this for about an hour, and my experience with Field of Glory has been this, like, 1,000 times over. I played, and I went with, probably a mistake, I went with the Battle of Hastings, which, if you don't know, in this game is kind of just a frontal charge. There's not a whole lot of tactics you can employ.
Is that the Braveheart battle?
Still, I did my best to, like, try to...
Is it the Braveheart battle?
Battle of Hastings is from the was it 1066 when the Normans versus the British?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could think of it as the founding of modern day England. Really, is the Normans came across from France, they kicked out the Saxons who had been there before, and William the Conqueror, as you will, sort of became the ruler of the southern end of the British Isles.
Oh.
And
I don't
know if did he officially found the Kingdom of England at that point or whatever, but that's where England essentially very much like a foundational battle in English history.
I was thinking of the Mel Gibson movie, with I thought Battle of Hastings had something to do with the William Wallace.
No, 200 years apart roughly, I think.
So in this battle, I don't think there's a whole lot of room for tactics, but basically I was just exploiting the best percentages I could find, hoping to get some morale break that would crumple their lines, just allow me to push in. What ended up happening is I did maximize some percentages. I had I think a 30% chance to win a battle and a 6% chance to lose, and my guy lost. So I just lost the die roll, and that got him disrupted. The way the game works is you fight worse if you're in a disrupted state. So then the subsequent die rolls, he started losing, and I just lost. So I hate this game. I hate Field of Glory. I hate all variants of it. The RNG, I hate it. It's a good game, but I don't know.
I don't think it's as much RNG driven as maybe you would feel. There definitely is an element of that. I think if we move on, is actually before I get started, does that wrap up your list of games, or we can move into
that's why it was intentional so that you can move on.
Segue that I botched.
I don't agree because I played 3 or 4 full series on my channel on Field of Glory or its variants, and I've always had this experience where you can get away with a whole game without having RNG decide it. And it certainly is RNG maximizing, so there's strategy involved. But I find this, I don't know, I think it's brilliant the way they've done it too, because I can see how they model individual units. I think it's all very clever. I just still ultimately maybe have some bad luck or something. Or maybe it's just this Battle of Hastings. I don't know if you've looked at that one, Matt, but it's just the whole point of the game is just to wait for the die rolls to go your way. I don't know, that's not compelling.
I mean, I haven't played Hastings, but I think one reason you may feel that way about the game is it's fundamentally built to feel like a tabletop war game. It's, so it's meant to feel like a game that you're moving these chits across this map and then you're rolling a dice to see what the combat results are. Like that, it is a board game on a computer, fundamentally. Even the art style, which I think is really clever, is very much like, it looks like some of these units are like hand-painted miniatures, right? That you're pushing across a map. What I will say, though, is there are definitely things you can do to maximize those RNGs. Frontal attacks are going to be dicey. See what I did there? Frontal rolls are going to be dicey pretty much no matter what, I feel like, in that game. But this era of combat was really about either finding, using heavy cavalry to crush units that couldn't stand up to them, in which case, if you go frontal with heavy cavalry, you're going to just run over most non-spear type units, or finding the flank and hitting them there. If you find the flank, no die roll is going to save you. You're gonna crush the enemy flank, and also the horse archers and other things like that, like about breaking the enemy cohesion before you come into contact. So there's a lot of things, yes, RNG matters. It matters in any kind of game of this style. I think they're just a little bit more upfront about it than some games that maybe hide the fact. But what I will say is that it is very much a tactics-driven game as well. So RNG matters, but there's things you can do to maximize that, right? Send your archers in, disrupt the enemy formation, then charge when the enemy's in a disrupted formation. Make sure you don't move your men across rough terrain, because that can cause your troops to lose cohesion and make their attack, less clear. I think one of the brilliant things about all the Field of Glory games do is they really tell how unmaneuverable armies in sort of the ancients and medieval period were, for the most part, unless you're talking Mongol cavalry units. But formations of spearmen, good luck trying to turn them on a dime. Like, you're not going to be able to shift your flank, and once you're engaged, you can't really disengage because you'll probably rout. Like, I feel like the game does a really good job of telling what that type of combat was like. If we move back to, like, what am I playing, as you can maybe tell by the way I'm talking about this, I am playing a fair bit of Field of Glory 2 Medieval, which, as of the time of this recording, is coming out in a few days. It comes out on February 4th. It'll be after that before you hear this episode. But I'm playing in a tournament that Matrix or Slytherin is sort of running with, I think, 8 other content creators. And it's really interesting. I've never really played multiplayer in Field of Glory. I'm really bad at Field of Glory, but I love it. It's one of those things where it's like, I love the concept and I love a lot of what I see here, but I'm just really bad at it.
You're getting routed?
Well, I'm not against the humans. I always get routed against the AI. My first battle against Andrew Channel, who's, I believe, a German YouTuber, we split, so I won one battle, he won the other.
Are you guys recording this so I can see it?
I didn't record those episodes. We had some scheduling issues, so we didn't actually fully complete the battle, but I was winning one of them when it ended, and he was winning the other. And then the current battle that I'm in the middle of right now, I'm actually playing Lionheart X10, who's a YouTuber and Twitch streamer, and he's out of England or out of the UK. And I'm recording that, so I'll be posting the first part of that in the next... Well, it'll be up by the time this airs, but I will have that episode up on my channel. And this one's interesting, because the first round was the British versus the French, but in this battle, it's actually the Mongolians versus the Hungarians. And the way the tournament's running is you each play each side, so you play every person twice. You know, you play the Mongolians in one battle and the Hungarians in the other, and you sort of play those simultaneously. And I thought I was doing really well as the Mongolians, but I'm pretty sure Lionheart X10's heavy cavalry is about to break my flank, and I'm not sure how that one's going to play out. And as the Hungarians, I made the mistake of putting my archers in the front line, and then my plan was to fall them back through my units, but apparently you can only do that with light archers. Regular archer units, they're too thickly packed together, so they can't move through your line. They can't fall back through a spear line. So they're getting absolutely crushed right now by Mongolian cavalry charges. I'm trying to bring my spearmen up to save the day, but we'll see how that all plays out. I'm not super confident. I may get embarrassed in both of these battles. But it's, I will say the one thing that was really fun is when I was playing as the Mongolians, I had 3 trebuchets, and I just pounded the hell out of a formation of knights, and they lost 200 of their 400 men just before they touched anything, and I'm just like, take that, you assholes, as these rocks are plowing the, you got to imagine you're a Hungarian noble, and you're just getting crushed by rocks by these, these steppe tribes. Just what's going on? What the fuck are we doing here? But that's kind of been the main thing I've been playing lately. I have... there was something else I wanted to talk about. I'm trying to remember what it is. I do want to get into Rogue State Revolution, but I haven't really played that a whole lot yet. And I downloaded a game called Doomsday Room, which is this. That
sounds
it's
horrific.
It's it's almost like it's a war room type game, but it's a fictional country that Canada apparently is some kind of fictional superpower in the Cold War. And it's about dealing with, you're basically in a war room again, with all these tables around this chair with a big global map, and then you get presented with these different situations that are occurring in the Cold War and sort of how you deal with it and how you respond to it. So it looks really neat. It's made by I've never heard of this developer before. The game itself, I'm not sure really. Let me double check. I don't think it has it has 2 Steam reviews. It came out on the 15th of January, so it's been out for a little while. It's made by Doubleton Games Studio.
What was the name again?
Doomsday Room. I don't know. It just looks cool. They make a bunch of I don't know. They made 3 or 4 other games on Steam. I don't know if this is, it may not be a great quality game or not. But it looks neat. So I kind of want to give it a try. So we'll see how it plays.
I do want to go back and say that, yeah, I agree with a lot of the stuff you were saying about Field of Glory Medieval. I think it is a really good game. Just very well designed. I'm just the kind of person who, although I stuck with XCOM for some reason, I don't like these games where a single bad die roll can cause everything to kind of go pear-shaped. And you can get like this waterfall. So, yeah. But all the points you made were very good, and I still would give the game like a good review because it's a good game. It's just not a good game for me.
I think it goes to... Actually, there were two other games I wanted to talk about really briefly. But I think that, to answer your question, it depends on... Like, one of the things I appreciate and I like is the idea of, like, if one of your units rout... all of the, like, several other units in your army maybe get caught up in the rout, which I think that gives credence to, like, your frustration of, like, oh man, it was just this one unit that failed and now half my army's running away. And so, like, I could see that being a frustration point. On the flip side, like, that's a really good way of modeling the way some of these, like, medieval battles were fought. Like, when there's this one key moment and, you know, your unit of cracked troops routs, the rest of your army that sees that loses heart, or at least the units on their flank. And so, like, that's an interesting game design challenge, right? You don't want to make it so much that, like, it comes down to that one decision or that one contact point. But on the flip side, like, if you're trying to model some of these battles, like, that's actually something you probably should do. So I think it goes to a bit of a challenge between how you design the game versus, like, getting it right, if you will. And I'm using quotation marks, not that anybody can see that. But the two other games I've been playing lately, a little bit of... We talked a lot about one of them, so I'm not going to say a whole lot. But I did go back and did a new playthrough of Strategic Command World War I, which is the newest Fury Software strategic command game. And I really enjoyed that. I played it from the Entente side, so from the Allies. And, you know, we won the war by 1916. We crushed the Central Powers. Poor Austria-Hungary. That was a lot of fun. And then I'm also just starting a game that I've heard a lot about, and I think it was popular a while ago, but for whatever reason I never played, and that is oh my god, I'm gonna have to edit this out. I can't remember the name got it. And that game is called Valkyria Chronicles 4, which I got actually on my Nintendo Switch, and I'm playing that kind of in more normal hours. For whatever reason, my wife enjoys watching me play games, but not on my computer. So, like, if I'm on the TV, she'll just kind of, I think it relaxes her. So I just started playing Valkyria Chronicles 4, which is kind of a cool concept. It's like, it feels like it's kind of modeled after, like, World War II loosely, but I think there's also, like, magic and other stuff involved. And it's sort of like a turn-based, I don't know, is it a war game? Is it just a strategy game, role-playing game? Like, it's very heavy on... It has very strong, like, Japanese visual novel type vibes with it. But so far, my experience is it's been really positive.
Yeah, I've heard of this game. What would you describe it as? What's the time period? I've heard about it, but can you just refresh my memory?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clearly modeled on, like, World War II time frame. Like, the tank looks kind of like a Sherman. Like, some of the guns look like Thompson machine guns or M1 Garands, those kind of things. But, like, there's definitely their own take on them, right? And there does appear to be some level of, like, magic involved as well. Although I'm, like, in the first 30, 40 minutes of the game, so I'm just getting started. So I think that wraps up what we've been talking about, or what we've been playing lately. Our main topic of the day is going to be an exciting announcement about a space-related 4X game. But before we get into that, John, I know you had one other thing you wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I got something really juicy. And I wanted to get you guys' opinions because I'm trying to get feedback from everybody. So, if you guys are not familiar, Slytherin came out with this new video series called Tea Time. And it's basically a video series, one each week, focusing on future games or showcasing upcoming games, things like that.
It's basically like their own, like, video podcast type deal that they do, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that. So while they were showcasing Field of Glory, the one that you were medieval, the one that you guys were just talking about, Marco was talking about, was answering a question off Twitter. One of the gentlemen off Twitter said something like, what 4 IPs are you guys going to announce this year? And he said, well, we're We're not going to, I'm not going to reveal it now, obviously, but I will let you guys know that these 4 IPs have been discussed or mentioned in our Twitter stream as well as Paradox Twitter stream. And it just got my mind racing because I was thinking, I was like, wait, what could it be? And, you know, it's not Star Wars, because earlier in the video they said something about on Twitter that if they get 100 likes, they'll pitch a game to Lucas. I think it's Lucas Games now. It's basically a new studio running all Star Wars games, that they'll pitch a game to Lucas Games. So we know it's not Star Wars. I know Marco said in our previous interview on Developer Dialogue that they don't have any projects working with Star Trek. I'm kind of hesitant. That would be a good way to kind of misdirect us, and to surprise us. I've been running through my head a couple IPs. The only one that I think would be a great contender, aside from Star Trek, would be The Expanse. But I wanted to get your guys' feedback.
Ooh. Oh, boy. By the way, if it's The Expanse, I'm all in. I would love to see a good game about The Expanse. And I really think that if in order to do The Expanse correctly, somebody would have to actually do full Newtonian physics in space, because that's like a really strong fundamental theme in The Expanse. Is people are burning and then counter-burning, you know. It's not like, hey, we're cruising at our, you know, well-known maximum speed of 300 meters per second in space, like, because that's preposterous. But anyways, I would be very excited about The Expanse. That would be, like, so interesting. I think it's ripe for the taking, too, because I talked to a lot of people who are watching The Expanse. I don't know, do you know?
Oh, yeah.
The Expanse?
I'm obsessed with that. I'm about to go into the books.
So one thing that just crossed my mind, instead of it being like a space-based, tactical war game like Battlestar Galactica, maybe they would do more of like something like Civilization, but it would be called Caprica.
I like that. Interesting.
So, I mean, I don't know if you knew, but there was a TV show called Caprica that only lasted, like one season?
Yeah,
when was that?
I think so.
It came out, did it come out while they were still making Battlestar Galactica, or was it right after and it was not very successful? I actually really enjoyed it. It was basically like before the Cylon Wars, and it was sort of following a couple of families and sort of their connection to the work that was going on the planet that would lead to the Cylons. So like it was all this artificial intelligence work on these planets, and so there was a lot of like social politics of the different planets and sort of how they interacted. There was this like Elon Musk type, tech figure who's like charging ahead with the development of what would become the Cylons. And then there's like, it was really focused on like their kids and sort of like their role in some of the the goings on and the rebellions and whatnot that were ongoing. And I thought it was very well done in terms of world building, and I enjoyed it. The other thing that, just to keep in mind, guys, they say IP, Jean, but that doesn't mean it has to be TV,
right?
Like,
I know.
Any game is IP. So, War in the Pacific 2, hello, yes, please.
Yeah, I know that could be a possibility. It's probably a strong possibility for me, at least maybe one or two of them. But
whoa, wait a minute though. But they said Paradox, right?
Yes.
Did they buy Victoria 3? Did they buy the Victoria license?
Oh my gosh, please.
I'm really hoping for Star Trek. To be honest, it's been 10, 20 years since we had a good Star Trek strategy game. Slytherin is the perfect choice. And
screw your Star Trek. I want Victoria 3. Give it to me. Inject it into my veins.
That'd be so good. I mean, I don't know how that would work, but I would love it if it did happen. Because I think Paradox doesn't want to deal with it, right? I'm pretty sure at this point that Paradox knows that their audience has kind of become less serious about strategy war games. And I think that they're moving like towards more of like a CK3 type feel. I mean, we've seen this evolution in a lot of their series that they're moving towards lighter strategy, not quite as deep. I don't think that they'd go back to something like Vicky.
They could. I think the piece with that, though, is I could see them sell the rights off, if only because they know there is a very strong, loyal following who wants to see it. So I could see them being like, listen, we think this game needs to get made, but right now with sort of the direction and focus of our studio, we may not be the studio to make it the way that fans want it to be. Like, they could go the route they've gone with CK, but I wonder if there wouldn't be backlash, just because, like, I think they know a lot of the Victoria fans want something that's really deep and grognardy, and that's, you know, that's not been their focus for the last, I don't know, year or two. So I could see them, you know, decide, listen, also I think the other probably the bigger piece is just the sense of it's not their largest IP. It's not, you know, they've talked about how in terms of sales, like Hearts of Iron, CK, like those are the big, you know, IPs, Europa Universalis. Those are the games that like pay the bills, if you will. And Victoria 2, while successful, like I think they were stunned. I think it sold like 200,000 units or something like that. I think my understanding is it's like by far the smallest fan base of their core IP games. So I could see them be like, you know, we want to devote time and resources to building out CK3, maybe to building out EU5, and then maybe they would have some sort of like partnership deal with Matrix to say like, all right, go build Victoria 3 yourself. Not, I mean, this is total speculation, right? We have nothing to back that up. But that would be kind of an interesting and cool thing.
Yeah, but it would have to be something that... It would have to be something that's they talked about to Slytherin on the Twitter feed. So I haven't seen anything where somebody pitched Slytherin like, hey, you guys should do Victoria 3.
Did it say that they talked? No, didn't you just say they said it was in the Twitter feed?
It was in the Slytherin Twitter feed and Paradox. Like, it has been discussed in both accounts.
Well, the only thing I could think of that would, I mean, I don't know. Sure, like TV Expanse, that kind of stuff could definitely be in there. But like the only thing I would think of is like people always are asking for Victoria 3, right? So that's definitely in Paradox's feed. I don't know, maybe Pride of Nations. I suppose that could come up in Paradox's feed at some point when someone's like comparing Victoria 2 to like another game, like another Pride of Nations game by Ajon.
Now I do know the date that we're going to get the first IP. Now,
and what is that date?
So the reason why I this is not from any backroom deals or anything. Like I haven't heard it from Slytherin or anybody. But I was kind of picking a couple things together. He did say in the stream that we will announce it in the coming weeks. Now, Slytherin did kind of put out their schedule for Tea Time in the next couple weeks. The current one, which is going to be on February 2nd, that's going to deal with Starship Troopers. So that's an IP that's they already announced. The next one after that is going to be a game reveal that Black Lab Games is working on. So Black Lab Games, if you guys are not familiar with, these are the guys that developed the incredible, legendary, probably one of the best games of my lifetime, Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. And I can't think of anyone better to take on a brand new IP than Black Lab Games. And the reason why I'm kind of going with something spacey, because their last two games, you know, the Battlestar and I think their previous game, I forgot the name of that one, were both space-based tactical combat games.
You know, it would fit the Battlestar Galactica mold. It would be if they did Firefly.
Ooh,
interesting.
Just like, you know, a series that was very popular or like a cult-like following, but you know, is clearly kind of wrapped up and no one's working on. Although that's not true with Battlestar anymore, but it was at the time that they did it.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, there's diehard.
They could even do like
fans.
the war with between the Empire and the Greycoats or whatever the Empire was called.
Well, I didn't finish the series. I think I got like halfway through it, and I just didn't finish it.
No, the series occurs after this war between these rebels and the Empire.
Oh, okay.
And so like the first episode sort of shows like the end of that war and the main characters' involvement in that. But they could do something like that.
I remember
Firefly would be an interesting, you know, thing, and I don't think anyone's working on anything new with that series, so I'm sure they could probably get rights to it reasonably cheaply.
Yeah, but I really think Slytherin can take on like the big dogs, like Star Trek, Star Wars, like those would be like, that's kind of like the NFL of IPs right there.
I mean, sure, I have no idea what that would cost them, but like, I'm just thinking of something comparable in terms to what their investment probably was for Battlestar and what an investment would be to get something like Firefly. That feels like that would be comparable, and I'm sure someone probably made a comment in Paradox's stream about like something about Stellaris to be like, have you considered like a Firefly mod, you know?
Oh yeah.
So like,
Babylon 5. Where's my Babylon 5?
Oh yeah, that could be another
that's
IP.
technically Star Trek, isn't it?
What did you say?
Isn't that Star Trek?
Oh my. Okay, we're taking this offline.
Okay, guys, maybe before you murder me, maybe we should move on to our main topic then, unless there's anything else you want to say about that, Sean.
Oh, I think we need to take this offline right now.
All right, I'm going to go get a drink so you guys don't like beat the crap out of me, and I'll be right back, and we'll start talking about our core topic 40 minutes in. Okay, well, now that I just thoroughly embarrassed myself in front of the entire internet, I realized that I was mixing up Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine. But they're basically the same thing, right?
Oh, my. Can we take another
I
break?
need a double barrel shotgun.
But anyway, so moving on to our real topic, it is space related as well, and there's some really exciting news that came out of Slytherin in the last few weeks. They revealed their first, I think this was their first. By
the way, can we tease it by saying they're revealing the sequel to a very popular game, and we can kind of like build it up as if it's going to be War in the East 2? And then, we already mentioned it was Distant Worlds, didn't we?
No, you said it was space-related, though.
Oh, damn it. Okay, then proceed.
All right, I'm just going to start over so my editing is easier.
Oh, no, that could be included, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. I'll follow suit.
Yes. Where was I before I was so rudely interrupted? Yes, so as we were saying, Slytherin just recently released some footage, the first gameplay footage of a really anticipated strategy game that I know I'm excited about. I don't think I was as excited about this game as I am now after having seen some of that footage. And I think Tortuga and Jean are both also pretty much fully on board for this game. It's Distant Worlds 2. Tortuga, you said some pretty interesting things about just your sheer level of excitement before the episode.
Yeah, this isn't the first time I mentioned this, unfortunately, but this is I don't think I'm one for hyperbole very often. I try to like rationally analyze or robotically analyze what's my level of enthusiasm for something, and I usually try to deflate any hype I have because that's how you get hurt, right? When you get your hopes up. But this is a game I'm legitimately excited about. Like I would say that this is a game I'm more excited about than any game I've been excited about for like the last 10 years. And maybe even longer. It might be the game I'm most excited to see come out in my entire life.
Whoa.
I can't think of it. Well, okay, that's not true because when you're a kid, I think you do have higher levels of enthusiasm. And I probably, when StarCraft, the original game, was coming out, and Warcraft 2 and stuff like that. But you know, in my adult life, I haven't been so excited for another game as this one in a long time. Or it's up there. And why is that? More importantly, we didn't hear anything about Distant Worlds 2 for a long time. I've been on the forums, so I've been pestering Eric Rudens for updates and stuff right there. I mean, there's a few threads on the original Distant Worlds 1 forum on Matrix Games. And we've been pestering for little updates about it. December 2019, they came out with this a little bit of gameplay reveal. So obviously this is over a year ago. And that's the first time we realized it was going to be 3D. But honestly, that was also a moment when I was a little bit nervous about the game. Because they went to 3D and people weren't sure if they would. And a lot of things can go wrong when you make that transition. Obviously, they're building from a new engine, a lot of different things. And does that mean, by the way, is their focus now more on aesthetics? Are they going to keep the real deep gameplay, which was core to Distant Worlds 1's plate? So these are a lot of questions, but all these things were answered in like the biggest affirmative way, in my opinion, when they showed this about 30 minutes of gameplay footage last week. And John, what was your opinion on it?
So from what I saw, it was startling. I was kind of in shock and a little bit of awe. I got the teaser trailer first. That's what I saw first. And when I was watching it, I was like, all right, so this is going to be a cinematic. I wonder if we're going to see any gameplay or, like anything of the engine. And everything looked gorgeous. Like, it had, like, ships by a planet. And I'm like, is this a cinematic or is this actual in-game engine? And it turned out it's actually the in-game engine. They made this teaser trailer straight from the in-game engine. It was that gorgeous. The textures on the planet with the ships being outside of it was just like, wow. And so I was just kind of like floored by that. And there was a couple other things that kind of really drew me was there are going to be thousands of planets, which I believe, I know there's a lot of planets in the original, but now that this is 3D and there's so many, and that you were mentioning that that they're doing this in 3D, the combats. You probably, I think you probably saw the combat one where you had tactical space combat. That to me was by far one of probably the best space tactical combat sequences that I've ever seen in my life. You have two fleets that are about to engage each other, right? And their ships move slow like capital ships. And they're launching fighters and bombers, and it's just like, wow, okay, this is... And you could zoom in, you could see the fighters and bombers, or you could zoom out. And one other cool thing was the enemy was able to kind of like... I'm going to use the word FTL in behind the incoming fleet. So they kind of flanked them, which I thought was pretty insane, that you can actually do that. Because normally when you have tactical combat... the fleets just auto position and then, you're on one side, they're on the other, and you smack into each other. But now that you can kind of FTL behind or around the enemy, kind of changes things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely in the original Distant Worlds 1.
Whoa, guys, I'm sorry. I'm so relieved because when Tortuga was talking, I nearly had a heart attack. Jean, I thought somehow you had perfected body snatching technology and you had possessed him because he was so excited about that game that I was paranoid. But to hear that you're excited about it as well, it gives me a sense of relief that all is right with the world, that you haven't possessed Tortuga, and that you're just both legitimately excited about this thing.
I would say that I have Jean's level of excitement for this game
obsession
that John's had about other games, yeah. Yeah, man, the combat, you mentioned this. I really, I'm wide-eyed and
misty,
jaw-dropped reaction to this combat. It was gorgeous. And what I would say that what I've seen from this, it's putting Slytherin and Matrix with Distant Worlds 2. It looks like it'll be on the same page as Stellaris with Paradox. And that is a very profound statement. I know I'm making something... I don't think that in the end, Distant Worlds will reach as many people as Stellaris, but I'm seeing what might actually even be a better game for even the people it won't reach. I just really think that this is... I mean, they've put a lot of work into it. Stellaris was something that they were starting from scratch. Paradox, they obviously hadn't made a Space 4X game. And this is Distant Worlds 2 coming from Distant Worlds 1, so they can obviously build on all the stuff. I think Stellaris took a lot of things that were in Distant Worlds. If you remember the original Stellaris, it had free motion between different galaxies. And that was something I've only seen in Distant Worlds prior to that. Most people do star lanes. Now, ultimately, they combined that. And we even see that's one of the introductions in Distant Worlds 2. There's going to be a heavier focus on nebulae in order to kind of create space, terrain, and I think the idea is to create choke points. But yeah, my impression with the combat, and I mean, I've gone frame by frame through the original video. I got access to the original video, and I made my own impressions video with commentary. So I've gone frame by frame through these videos to do all the different comparisons between Distant Worlds 1 and Distant Worlds 2. But my main impression, again, sorry I'm saying this so much, I'm that excited about it. It's rivaling Stellaris for my money.
Might have to top you because I've been inspecting the screenshots like crazy myself, and I might have to top you. I might have to say I really believe this. This could surpass Stellaris as the best strategic and tactical space 4X game. The couple of things that really kind of stuck out to me, like we were mentioning the combat, but the diplomacy side, right? You can swap out techs, right? And I haven't played Distant Worlds 1, so I know some people are probably going to say that it was in Distant Worlds 1, but I've never played it. So looking at it here, I can swap out technologies. I can offer them one, and they can offer me another one. I really, really enjoy like how many thousands of worlds there are going to be, and asteroids. So they mentioned asteroids as kind of something I can, I guess, build a colony on. I thought that was kind of cool. But the other big thing is that they mentioned that this game can be as simple or as complex as you want. Stellaris is take it as it is. This game, I feel like you can play it like I was just mentioning, as simple, as generic or as general as you want, or you can dive into the details and really go grognard on this.
So what I'll, just to jump in here, because I'm usually the one who talks most, but I feel like I haven't said anything about this game yet. First off, I think your comparison to Paradox Tortuga was spot on. Like, when I saw some of the initial clips, I was like, wait, what? Slytherin is making this? And that's not like a knock against Slytherin. I just, this is an incredibly impressive initial presentation that they have put together for this game. And it to me, and again, we've only seen a couple of short clips, but based on what we've seen, it, in terms of polish, in terms of the way they're presenting this thing, it looks like it's a multi-$100 million company. Paradox is a much bigger studio with many more resources, and for them to be able to put together what they've put together so far with Distant Worlds is pretty impressive and exciting. I think, I did play Distant Worlds 1 a bit. I didn't play it as much as you, Tortuga, but I think some of what you're touching on, John, is like my impression of Distant Worlds 1 was, Stellaris wasn't out when that came out, but there were a lot of other Space 4X games like Sins of a Solar Empire and other things like that kind of were out around the same time frame. My impression with Distant Worlds 1 was always that, like, it's kind of like the war. Maybe Aurora became that, but it's kind of like the War in the Pacific of space strategy 4X games, in the sense that, like, it had incredible detail, incredible complexity. The worlds, in many cases kind of ran themselves, and you could take on a very hands-on approach, or you could kind of just be like, hey dude, I'm the president, I'm going to let like commerce and all these other things kind of run themselves, and I'm going to focus on some key pieces that like the actual emperor or whatever would care about. And the sheer size and scope and depth of the game paled even anything that Stellaris does, at least in my opinion. Like, it felt like there was a living, breathing universe out there, and it didn't feel like I'm just racing to an end game against some big end game challenge. It felt more of like these are living, breathing worlds that sort of exist and are fighting against each other and are struggling against each other, but it's not part of necessarily a space opera. Like, it's the story you want to tell. Larry Monty and Das Tactic were some pretty big YouTube channels or whatnot. Actually put together a really cool Succession series that I got a chance to play a part of, where there were like 20 or 30 different participants, and they passed the save off every time the leader. Or maybe it was like every 8 years. I can't remember if it was every 8 years or every time the leader of the actual like empire died. And so like the idea was like you were able to like pass off the rule, so you had to pick it up from where the last person let it down. And this is one of those games that I think is really well suited to that. Now, I'm impressed with all of the presentation that we've seen so far with Distant Worlds 2. I hope that when we actually get our hands on it, what really, in my opinion, set Distant Worlds 1 apart was that complexity and that depth to the game and the universe. I hope that we still have that, and that it's not streamlined out, right? Because, Stellaris is a really enjoyable game, and I like to play it. But if Distant Worlds 2 is going to hold me and pull me away from something like Stellaris, it's going to have to offer something unique, and visuals, while great at expanding their potential market, aren't enough. So I really hope that they maintain a lot of that depth, a lot of that complexity, and so that we really have a really complex world to live in. And that would definitely be something that would lure me in and probably cause me to sink countless hours into this.
I don't think you have to worry, because I've looked at the video, like I said, literally frame by frame, looking through different parts of the gameplay video. And I've seen that they're doing the private economy this way. They have the public economy there. Obviously, we won't know for sure until we're playing it ourselves, but all the pieces that I was hoping to see in Distant Worlds 2 appear to be there. The other thing I wanted to say is the Stellaris comparison. There's one part of Stellaris which is not quite as deep. I'm sorry, the Distant Worlds is not quite as deep in, and that's the city, the actual planet building. So Stellaris has a very big way you're building your plans. You have to put different buildings in and stuff like that. And Distant Worlds has always taken a much lighter approach to that. But I think it makes up for it by having the private economy, which is supposed to be... You're also building up more in the systems. You have more interaction with the different planets that you're not colonizing. So from that perspective, the best thing about Distant Worlds 1, I think a lot of people said, is the immersion factor. You would see the private economy constantly having ships move around. This constant movement, this feeling of the galaxy being alive. This is, I mean, more than anything, I heard this as positive feedback from Distant Worlds 1. Seeing all the ships move around that are part of your private economy, it makes you realize that even though you don't control them, you cannot control them, but they're moving around and they're actually moving resources.
Well, I think one thing that if I can interject, one thing I wanted to kind of throw in here is, and I guess we can, this might be changing the subject a little bit, but one thing I noticed in this game is it has the strategic component and, of course, the tactical component. With Stellaris, right, from what I understand in the times that I played it, you know, when two fleets collide, I feel like that whole battle there is just, you know, it's just automatic, right? There's really not much you can do besides, you know, end the battle. So there's really no tactical component in Stellaris, but there is in this game. And I feel like that's going to make a huge change, at least when I'm deciding to play a 4X space strategy game, because I'm like, hey, I'm going to choose a space strategy game that, you know, has both the strategic and tactical component, kind of like we got with the Grand Tactician Civil War thing going on there. It's kind of almost like the same kind of analogy, you know, Grand Tactician has strategic and tactical. This game has the same thing. And I really love the tactical component because you can actually, you can have a massive fleet of like 60 or 100 ships and, you know, and go up against a fleet of, I don't know, 10, right? And it doesn't matter if, you know, how many ships you have. If the guy on the other side is a great admiral and knows more about, you know, strategy or whatever than you, he can kick your ass if you're not, you know, carefully enough, you know. And I think that means a lot in terms of strategy, because, you know, I feel like with Stellaris, I'll just build, have the biggest fleet and just attack the enemy fleet, and, you know, it's pretty much math after that. But here, there's actually strategy involved. So you can lose even if you have the bigger fleet.
Yeah, I mean, you can lose in Stellaris if you have a poorly composed fleet. But I did want to touch on what Tortuga was talking about before with regards to the private economy. I agree with you 100%. Stellaris has sort of this like actual planet management piece that Distant Worlds never really... Well, Distant Worlds had a management, but like a lot of the economy sort of ran itself, right? And you didn't like build individual buildings or in the same way that you do in Stellaris.
Yeah, it's mostly you just mostly set tax rate. That's the biggest thing you do for planets.
Right. But the thing that, to your point, the thing that always impressed me about the game was that private economy in space. One of the things that I think really is lacking in Stellaris is like, so if I'm going to deploy my fleet somewhere, it'll probably just be based on what's on the planet, right? Like the planets that I want to protect, as opposed to in Distant Worlds, like you've got trade lanes, you've got private ships moving across the skies. Like it feels, if you're doing space navies, which is fundamentally what most of these kind of games are about, is having navies, but in space. like how can you have a space navy if there aren't commerce lanes, if it's just planet defense, right? Like, and so I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, and that I really enjoyed, like just seeing the, to me, Distant Worlds 1 always felt like, yeah, I'm actually in charge of this country. I don't care what Joe Schmo on his individual ship is doing as a whole. Like, I don't need to manage the buildings of individual buildings on the planet, but like, it felt like a living, breathing world in a way that Stellaris doesn't, because Stellaris is kind of like your fingers are on everything, as opposed to like, yeah, I can see some other people going about their daily lives, shipping their cargo across the skies, and like, I'm not touching that. Like, there is something going on other than just the opposition in here that makes this world feel real. And I'm really excited to see that, but also brought into sort of a newer, prettier, well flushed out world. Hopefully it's is still intuitive, or is intuitive. I don't know if Distant Worlds 1 really was, but hopefully it's intuitive to play, because what I will say about this game is this game, we've been talking a lot about visuals. Usually that's not the number one thing on my radar, but what I will say about this game is this feels like Slytherin's attempt to play with the big boys, if you will, and to really get something mainstream in an area, 4X, which is much bigger than a lot of like the traditional wargaming genres in terms of player base.
I actually got the same impression. I mean, I think I mentioned it, that I felt that way, but to lend even more credence to that point, if I'm not mistaken, I think they actually hired for the soundtrack their own orchestra. I mean, like Andreas Valdotov, he's the one who did a lot of the soundtrack for Paradox games. So I think that they're doing something like that for Distant Worlds 2 as well. And I mean, that's a huge step. Obviously, it's a pretty big investment, but I feel like Slytherin is playing all their cards right to expand, maybe even to kind of fill the void that Paradox has started to leave as they push towards broader, slightly less complicated. I don't want to say, like, I don't want to slight Paradox about this, but they're expanding to areas which have more people, so slightly broader markets. And I feel like Slytherin has sensed that and realizes that this is an opportunity for them to kind of fill the void.
I also expect that Distant Worlds 2, part of the justification for that investment is, I don't know if you remember this, but when Distant Worlds 1 first went on Steam, like, this was an old game. It didn't look terribly great. But when it first went on Steam, it was a top 10 Steam seller for like 2 weeks. Like, when they first put it on Steam, it sold, it must have, because it was in the top 10. I mean, I don't know what it sold, but it must have done really well for several weeks, because it was one of their games that when they first started moving their catalog over to Steam, that and I think Combat Mission or Command Modern Air Naval Operations, those were the two games that I remember like looking at it and be like, wow, it's still in the top 20, or wow, it's still in the top 10, and they stayed there for a long time. So, for them to do that, especially in this case on a game that was old, that is a hyper-competitive space as well. Like, there may not be a lot of, like, Command Modern Air Naval Operations competitors, right? Like, people might know of Harpoon, but, like, there's not really a lot of other games out there like that. There are a lot of Space 4X games. And for Distant Worlds to be in that top 10, top 20 for what I think ended up being, like, 2 weeks... maybe not 2 weeks in the top 10, but 2 weeks in the top 20, and they were in the top 10 for at least a week. Like, I'm sure that said something to Slytherin where they were kind of like, whoa, like, there's something here, right? So, like, when it comes time to make investment decisions on, are we going to make this game look as good as, a $100 million company type deal like Paradox, like, this is a game that they would consider doing that in.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think that the 4X market, I generally associate myself more with the wargaming stuff, but if I had to guess, I would say the 4X market could be anywhere from like 5 to 10 times bigger than wargaming market. So that's just based on the numbers I've seen from like even podcasts, like the Explorminate podcast. Just tons of people listening to that, and the number of games and the amount of money put into like Amplitude Studios, the Endless series. They're now the ones making, what's that new, was it Mankind? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, that felt more like a Civ Civ replacement type deal. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right too, though. But like, how, that probably comes from, look at how big sci-fi is in pop culture today, right? Like, Jean, you're always raving about Star Trek. Like, all of those intersections for these big sci-fi series, Star Trek, Star Wars, The Expanse, Battlestar Galactica, like, fans of all of that stuff will naturally find these types of 4X space games something, if they're a gamer anyway, that they're probably more inclined to be interested in than War in the Pacific in any event, even if the complexity level might end up being similar in some of these games. I do want to add one other thing, and this is kind of a question to you, Jean. I think they still have the Battlestar Galactica license.
Oh, yeah.
Distant Worlds Battlestar?
Well, I think Marco, who, if you guys are not familiar with, kind of runs pretty much all the IPs that Slytherin gets, and he mentioned that they're planning to come back to that. So that could be.
Can I just say though that like Distant Worlds, it might be too small a scale actually, because there's only so many planets. But like, I would love to see the Battlestar. Maybe someone will do it with a mod. The Battlestar universe brought into Distant Worlds.
Well, I think what they need, I think one great way of doing that is have, and I don't know if I mentioned this to them, but basically have, one of the planets, right? Like, make a huge galaxy map like you have in Distant Worlds, right? Have the 12 colonies, right, on one end of the map, and you have Earth on the other end of the map, and you have the Cylons chasing, the fleet, right?
Screw that, Chaz. I don't care about the chase. I just want to live in the world of Battlestar, and I feel like, before the fall. So I think like this is, I mean, you could do that with anything though, right? Like this game is perfect, and so is Stellaris, and so are a lot of the other space games. You could do Star Wars mods, you could do Star Trek mods or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But like,
and they come with an editor in this. Like it's a built-in game editor. Slytherin's known for that, and I love that it's coming with this. So now we can, I mean, if Slytherin doesn't do Star Trek, we can do Star Trek on this.
Yeah,
Tortuga, were there a lot of mods in Distant Worlds 1 or no?
Yeah, definitely. There was Star Trek mod, Star Wars mod. There wasn't really a good Babylon 5 mod, which is just always I always look for that one, and it always continues to disappoint.
Which one of those is Star Trek in Babylon 5, or was it?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Deep Space Nine?
Is it time to end the episode already?
So I want to ask, well, you guys both played it, so I guess I could ask you both. So there are galactic storms and black holes in this game. Were they in the first one? And how do they affect ships and planets?
So there were, if you're talking about galactic storms, are you talking about nebulae?
I don't know. It says galactic storms and black holes will be in this. So I know when in Stellaris, if there's like a black hole, it really doesn't do really much to the fleet or, anything like that. I'm just kind of curious with galactic storms and black holes. Do they move? And if they don't move, how do they affect the ships and planets in the system?
Gosh, you know what? I don't remember doing anything special with black holes. I don't know if they were modeled.
Okay, so you're not sure. I don't remember either, frankly. I don't remember black holes or anything else like that being a huge part of the original game. I think
nebulae were. You definitely had those, and they would usually, I think it would just reduce sensor range, stuff like this. Usually you would have, I think there was always like one big collection of ships which would be hidden in one of the nebulae, so you'd still have an incentive to go search for them, because one of them would be hiding like this dead ship fleet that you could go with your construction ships and take over and then rebuild, and some of them had like super weapons on them. I don't know, Distant Worlds was so cool. It was such a great game, and I mean it still is. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I wasn't like, I mean, I knew it was coming. I played a little bit of Distant Worlds 1. I think I tend to skew more in just the regular wargamer type genre. I don't play a ton of sci-fi games. Battlestar was something that always really interested me more because of like the sort of civ military relationship that exists in that series, and sort of it spoke to sort of a military type story that was that didn't feel sci-fi. It was sci-fi, but it didn't feel sci-fi, at least until you got some of the crazy stuff they did with the story. But Distant Worlds, I think one of the things that really impressed me about the first game was like it felt like a story that I could relate to. Like it felt like like human history. Like, it made sense. It wasn't just like, and aliens are everywhere. Although can you talk a little bit about aliens and sort of their existence? Like, is there an existential threat in Distant Worlds? Because I don't remember there being one in Distant Worlds 1.
The storyline, the lore behind the different races, I'm not familiar with. But at least this was kind of confirmed, I think, in the most recent stream, this gameplay reveal. It seems like the best way to start, or the intended way to start, is pre-warp, which means you can kind of think of it as, like if we were tomorrow or, in 50 years to start moving out. And then in the original Distant Worlds 1, you would actually encounter a relic of some ship, one of the planets. And then from this, you would learn the secrets of hyperdrive. And that would be what you then research it, and then you'd be able to jump to different systems. And you're unaware that there are other alien species out. Then I don't know if there's no like communication path to follow. So in this sense, it'll be interesting to see what they do, if they've changed this at all. There's no like communication standard. I guess you just instantly are assumed to know the language of aliens. I don't know. I don't know what the lore is. So this is all, unfortunately, not something I can answer.
It's interesting you're saying that, because you're saying that I'm like, wait, like Stellaris had some of that stuff, but like you always blitz through it, right? Like it's like, oh, aliens are discovered, yay, it's kind of a big deal, but not really, because we already knew. But yeah, it's interesting you say that though, because I do feel like there's definitely, you can see some of that parallel. I'm sure they're not the only two space games that have done things like that before too.
I mean, going into like the general Slytherin kind of thing, one of the things that we interviewed, I interviewed Marco, I think 1 or 2 episodes ago on Developer Dialogue, and one thing that really kind of surprised me in that interview is something that was kind of a complete bombshell to me. So I asked Marco, I said, how many like projects are you guys have active at any one moment in Slytherin? And he mentioned that they have approximately 100 projects in development right now. And that was just mind-blowing. Now, when he says projects, that's games and DLC. So in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to have 100 titles coming from Slytherin and Matrix Games, which to me is just mind-blowing. So I'm really, really excited what's coming up this year and what's coming up in the future. So I'm very excited. And
well, I think we might need to pump the brakes here a little bit. I think when they're talking about 100 titles, that might not be 100 games that are going to come out. I'm not sure what the.
No, he mentioned it was games and / DLCs, like extra content.
Yeah, who knows? Like, how many of those might be like submissions in the K Project queue, right, Jean? Like, maybe those never even materialize.
Yeah, that's true. But a man can dream.
I will say the one thing I'm not short on is games to play. I need fewer games and I need to be better. I don't need more games. Anyway, with that being said, guys, I think this has been a great discussion on a lot of different things today, but also Distant Worlds 2. All I can say about Distant Worlds 2 is I'm excited and I've been really impressed with what I've seen so far. Is there any closing words either of you would like to share on the game?
Yeah, I would say if you're at all curious about it or interested in it, go wishlist it. I really think, like, if I was to, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'd be putting all my chips on Distant Worlds 2. I just have it's a rare feeling that I have, and I hope it's not wrong, because then I'll be like 0 for 1 instead of like, some reasonable batting average. But I just have this sense that this is going to be a great game in a way that I haven't said this about any game in recent history. So I'm getting all the right vibes from it.
Is it, just to clarify, it's the same like guy that did the first one, right?
That's right. There's Elliot, who's the programmer, and Eric Rutens, who's project director. I think he might also help with coding, but yeah, it's those two main guys.
With that being said, guys, I would be remiss if we didn't close off with what you are drinking tonight.
Hot cocoa.
Ooh, saucy.
It's that time of the year, It's January, it's raining.
We got 12 inches of snow today. My dog was like wading through the 18 or so inches in the yard and like had to jump to be able to like walk anywhere.
That was a cute video.
What about you, Jean?
I am coffee. Kave. My Polish comrades will know what that means. Kave.
Oh my goodness, you guys. Come on. This is the Single Malt Strategy podcast. I'm so disappointed in you guys. I have been sipping a 12-year-old Glen Fittich, which I'm not a huge fan of, actually. I've never been a fan of Glen Fittich Scotch for whatever reason. It just kind of doesn't taste right to me. It's really harsh. It doesn't have a smooth taste. It doesn't have a terribly complex taste to me. It just seems kind of burns without a lot of variability to it. So, but I picked it up.
I guess you're not getting any free samples from them now.
Yeah, well, maybe, listen, if the next episode is sponsored by Glen Fittich, then Glen Fittich, the finest Scotch ever made. But,
doesn't sound like you'd want a sponsorship.
No, you know what? I can be bought. Okay. So let anyone listening know I can be bought. With that being said, guys, thanks for coming out for another episode, Single Malt Strategy, episode number 66. Hope you guys hope you guys enjoyed the listen. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt. Signing off with my trusty cohorts, Eric, Tortuga Power, and Jean, the Strategy Wargamer. Have a great one, guys.